Saturday at 12.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe. Pope Francis has prayed for the victims of an attack on a Nigerian Catholic church in which at least 50 worshippers were killed by gunmen. The assault took place in the southern town of Owo in Ondo State, which has left residents reeling in fear. Survivors of the attack suffered lacerations, sustained gunshot wounds and blast injuries from a range of weapons used by unknown assailants. Officials have warned the number of fatalities could rise. Meanwhile, police say that efforts are underway to arrest those responsible for the attack, and a manhunt has been launched for a Catholic priest who is abducted during the incident.
Victims of an attack on a Catholic church in Nigeria were being treated in hospital on Monday. At least 50 people, including children, were killed in the attack on the St. Francis Catholic Church in Owo, according to media reports. Among those recovering at Owo's Federal Medical Center was Alex Michael. When gunmen burst into the church during Mass on Sunday, he hid his children under the seats.
They entered, they started firing everywhere. So many people. But unfortunately, because of the case, my leg was unable to enter the pew in the church. That was where they shot my leg.
The medical director at this facility says 26 adults and 13 children were brought to them, and that some were dead before they arrived. Doctors like Jerry Bankole have been treating lacerations, bullet wounds and blast injuries.
Well, we've been doing our best to resuscitate and make sure that their injuries are not worsened in any way. A number of them have gone to theatre also to have surgery done.
Owo is located in Nigeria's southwest, a part of the country that does not usually experience violent conflict over religion. Authorities have not yet released any information about who carried out Sunday's atrocity or why.
Well, to get some thoughts on this horrific attack, we're now joined by Seun Bakare, who's head of programs for Amnesty International in Nigeria. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. I don't know how much more you know about this shooting. Has this been assigned to anyone? Has anyone claimed responsibility?
Thanks for having me. As at this time, no group has claimed responsibility for the shooting. And the authorities also have not been able to unravel the mystery behind the exact group that carried out the attacks.
Is it a surprise to see something like this in this state? A lot of times we hear about these kinds of motorbike gangs further north.
Indeed, it's a surprise that gunmen have now invaded another part of the country. As you rightly said, attacks like these are common in the northern part of the country. And then what we have seen is that relatively safe states in the southwestern part of the country have now begun to experience attacks like this. So it was shocking that a place that had not witnessed an attack like this in the past has now come under such an attack. So truly, people are worried that perhaps the issue of gunmen, unknown gunmen, is beginning to spread across the country.
What's your take from the experience that you have of Nigeria and these kinds of attacks? What could be a motive? Because certainly it wasn't robbery, and to kill people worshipping almost looks towards some kind of religious fanaticism.
Well, one thing that you may want to advert your mind to is that in recent time, kidnapping has become very rife across the country. So there are some people who have said that perhaps the attackers came with the intention of kidnapping the priest or some of the priests in the church. But it is difficult to know at this time exactly what the motive behind the attack was. But I think that going by what we have gathered from witnesses and people who were in the church, there was perhaps an intention on the part of the attackers to kidnap the priest. I mean, you know that a priest was kidnapped just about 1 or 2 weeks ago, and then it came out to say the church paid ransom. So there are people who think that perhaps the fact that a large amount of money was paid by the church in order to get the prelate of Methodist Church released about 2 weeks ago, perhaps that is a motivation for these faceless gunmen to have attacked another church with the intention of, kidnapping the priest. But no one knows exactly, because no group has claimed responsibility and no group has come out to say this is the motive for the attack.
All right, so it could just be criminality, actually, that we're looking at, as violent as it is.
I mean, it's sad that the country is going through a very difficult time. And I think what happened in Owo truly reveals the impunity that gunmen are enjoying. And as you already know, gunmen are, quite frankly, on rampage across the country. And what is shocking is that up until now, events like these have not woken up the authorities to their responsibility of increasing protection on civilians. So we are hoping that this tragic event would offer a wake-up call to the authorities, who must now do everything to ensure that perpetrators of these kind of crimes face justice. What we have seen so far is that in places where this kind of attacks have happened, there has been no justice. People have not been arrested, the perpetrators have not been brought to book, and we think as an organization that this is the reason why these kind of crimes continue to happen. And this attack shows a complete disregard for the right to life. And authorities owe a duty to protect the right to life of its people. We've not seen that. And so we are hoping that this time around the authorities will take this very seriously and swing into action to ensure that we do not have a repeat of this kind of attacks.
All right, you say authorities should be doing more. Does this speak to negligence or capability? It may be that they can't.
I mean, I think it's a mixture of both. Because we learned from people who were in the church when the attack happened and some of the residents in the community is that the attack lasted for about 15 or 20 minutes. And during this time, there was no response from security forces. Something has to be fundamentally wrong if an attack like that happens in a small community like that, and for 15 or 20 minutes, there was no response from security forces. So perhaps a bit of negligence, but perhaps also a lot of incapability on the part of the authorities.
What do we know about Ondo State that it could be seeing this? You suggested earlier it could be copycat type of crime, but does Ondo State have any history of any kind of political, religious, or other kind of intolerances?
I mean, I mentioned earlier that Ondo State has always been a calm and safe state as far as we know. And so it is difficult to piece together why this may be happening at this time. Of course, we know that this is a political season in the country. I mean, elections are coming, campaigns are in top gear. So we don't know whether there is a connection between that and the attack. But it is fair to say that Ondo State has been a safe state up until now. But now the eyes of the world is entirely on Ondo State, and we are hoping that the authorities will be able to do something to forestall this kind of attack, not only in Ondo State, but across the country.
Motorbikes seem to be now a preferred mode for these kinds of activities. I remember, I think Abuja banned them coming into the city centre because of the terrorist activities that were taking place with people on motorbikes. Are we going to see more of this kind of thing? Because I think even in Lagos, there were issues around people riding on motorbikes.
Yes, I mean, it was just last week, if I'm not mistaken, or 2 weeks ago, that Lagos began to again enforce the ban on motorbikes, which we call Okada around here. And definitely, criminality was one of the reasons why Lagos State did that. It may happen that Ondo State and perhaps other states would also adopt some of these measures. But again, these measures, if they are being adopted, must also be balanced with the needs of the people. I mean, in many of these rural communities, motorbikes are one of the most reliable sources of transportation. So the authorities have to balance between the need for security and the need not to inconvenience unnecessarily the people within these communities.
All right, so there is the political drama, there is the internecine drama in terms of religious fanaticism, but there's a rise in crime and criminality, these kidnappings amongst them. What is fueling that, do you think?
I think there are a number of factors, and I think one of it is, the economic situation in the country. Clearly, everywhere where there are economic crises, you will definitely find an increase in criminality. But beyond that also, I believe that the fact that the authorities have not been able to rise up to the occasion to, for example, bring perpetrators of crimes and attacks to justice is one reason why people may be emboldened to do it again. We know, as a matter of fact, that where there is no justice, where there is no accountability, impunity reigns supreme. So that, it cannot be denied, is one of the reasons why we continue to see these attacks, because gunmen and attackers are emboldened every day, knowing fully well that if they carry out these attacks, they probably would not be found, nothing would probably happen to them. But again, victims and families of people who suffer from these kind of attacks, they have a right to know the truth about what has happened to them. And so the criminal justice system must rise up to that responsibility of ensuring that families and victims know exactly what has gone wrong. We have been calling on the Nigerian authorities to ensure that a thorough and impartial investigation is launched to identify perpetrators of this kind of crime and of crimes in the past, and to prosecute them, so that will serve as a deterrent for other people who may have an intention to carry out this kind of attacks or crimes.
All right, perhaps finally, just to wrap up, we often hear about corruption inside security forces and some of these authorities. Could some of this be happening with the collusion and the help sometimes of authorities?
I mean, we've had people accuse the authorities of collusion. But one thing that is clear really is that in any society where corruption is rife, we'll definitely see this kind of attacks, because corrupt officials sometimes are not able to discharge their responsibilities, even when there is a willingness of the part of some officials to discharge their responsibilities effectively. Corruption has a way of slowing down the entire response of the authorities. So it is corruption, for example, that ensures that or that causes a situation where the security forces or members of security forces don't have access to the right weapons and the right resources to be able to do their work. So clearly, corruption is a big issue that needs to be tackled alongside the other issues that I have outlined before now.
Seun Bakare, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for joining us and giving us some insights on this tragedy that's taken place in Ondo State. Thanks for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, so that was Seun Bakare, who's the head of programs for Amnesty International in Nigeria. Stay with us. You're watching The Globe. After the break, we'll continue with that story that broke earlier. Rajesh and Atul Gupta have been arrested, we believe, in the United Arab Emirates. We'll be speaking to a spokesperson from the Department of Justice. Stay with us.